Hello, friends. Welcome to another edition of My Side of the Fence. Your friend Matt Jacobowski here, and excited to feature one of the favorite leaders and folks I get to deal with, Miles Wilson, President and CEO of Education Works. Hey, Miles.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. It's always great to see you and to catch up with you. You're one of my favorite people, and I haven't had a chance to shake your hand or give you a hug in too long, so we'll have to do that again soon.
I appreciate that. Far too kind.
Yeah, well, Miles, I have a couple traditions on this show, and it always opens up with some rapid fire. So if you're ready, I'm going to start throwing them at you.
Let's do it.
Favorite food?
I love Thai food. I'm a Thai food fanatic.
There you go. How about favorite sport?
Definitely basketball.
Well, I wish that we were still watching the Sixers.
That hurts bad. That hurts really bad.
It does.
Yes.
Favorite book?
The Spook That Sat by the Door. Sam Greenlee, author.
Okay. What about your favorite holiday?
Favorite holiday would have to be Juneteenth. So Juneteenth is a holiday that is being recognized now throughout the country, but it's always been celebrated, particularly in Texas. But down south, it's always been a tradition. I'm just happy now that there's more attention given to it and the roots of Juneteenth. So I've always been a big fan of Juneteenth. And it's actually a recognized holiday. It's been a recognized holiday at Education Works for the last few years.
Great. Thank you. So Miles, this show is meant to learn about you, and there's often perceptions about that guy over there in the corner office and what he does and doesn't do.
Sure.
But as you and I both know, you're just a regular person like the rest of us. You just take on different things. But I want my guests and listeners to know a little bit more about Education Works and your path to the role as president and CEO, if you don't mind sharing.
Sure. So Education Works is a nonprofit. We're based in Philadelphia. We are the largest provider of out-of-school time services in the city of Philadelphia. So out-of-school time being programming that takes place for children or kids from kindergarten all the way up to 12th grade. For Education Works, what we do, we focus on STEAM programming, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, also entrepreneurship and wellness, mindfulness in particular. So those are our three areas of focus, and we deliver those services or that programming from 3 to 6 throughout the city of Philadelphia. We also have programming in Camden, New Jersey as well. On top of that 3 to 6 time period during the school week, we also provide summer programming to approximately 1,000 kids in Philadelphia and Camden as well. We have workforce development strategies within Education Works as well. One in particular is Power Corps PHL for Opportunity Youth, ages 18 to 28, with a large number of those individuals coming out of incarceration. So it's really about connecting those individuals, those young people, to career opportunities via the green economy, jobs you would find within the green economy. So that's Education Works in a nutshell. As it relates to our budget size, we're about $10 million budget size. We just finished up our business plan, and we have thoughts of growing throughout the region and nationally.
Yeah, that's exciting. And for those of you out there who have complained about the pandemic, imagine having to run those programs and services for the last year and a half. So, more power to you and to your team on that.
Thank you.
And I'll talk a little bit about how you ended up at Education Works and then some of your stops along the way.
Wow. So I'm born and raised Philadelphia. So I'm a product of public schools and Catholic school, actually, a mix. Born and raised here. I've actually held national positions, but always made it a point to be based here in Philadelphia. I am a criminal justice and sociology major from Lincoln University. The first historically Black HBCU, first HBCU diploma granting HBCU. I started off as a school worker, like a social worker, services to children in your own home. So I had a delinquent caseload and a family caseload. So engaging families in their home, in their neighborhoods and communities, inside schools, to work on goals set for them, to sort of keep them on track, either in education or to keep them out of institutions or incarcerated, things of that nature. So that's how actually I started my career. Originally, my intent was to be a criminal attorney, and I had a work experience during college that had me want to engage people without that price point. So I went from the prospect of making several hundred thousands of dollars coming out into making nowhere near that. But that's how I started my work as a school worker. From there, I worked at a place called St. Gabriel's Hall, which is considered a secondary school. It is a placement. It's a lockup for teenagers. So I spent my time as a counselor and actually was a teacher there, as a social studies teacher in the school department there. So I went from there. I ended up as a teacher, well, not a teacher, but an assistant principal at a national education company. And we had a contract here in Philadelphia. From there, I grew in the organization and became a principal and then regional vice president for the Mid-Atlantic region, we call it. From there, I actually ran an organization called Nonprofit Finance Fund, their Mid-Atlantic region. I was a site director for the Mid-Atlantic region. It's a national organization. It's a CDFI. So the organization itself has a team of finance professionals, and the job is to actually assist nonprofit organizations, from the smallest to the largest, to understand their financial health and well-being and how to get to a healthier place. On the other side of the house, we actually had the opportunity and resource to lend organizations money, similar to a bank. Just better understanding the ebbs and flows of nonprofit finance. So like a bank would automatically want their money back, let's say on the first. Understanding the ebbs and flows of nonprofits, we wouldn't necessarily want that payment back on the first. We were much more flexible about how that money was returned. And we also assisted you on how to carry that loan, how to support that loan, so you didn't put yourself in bad financial shape. Let's put it that way. From there, I was on the leadership team at an organization called PSP, Philadelphia School Partnership. And the idea was, how do we take resources, money, and supports, and identify high-performing schools and give them the resources to grow in seat numbers, so more kids had the opportunity to participate or be educated in a high-performing school. Assisted with talent initiatives that impacted families' lives, like Philly Plus, which is a alternative track principal certification program, actually the first alternative track principal training program authorized by the state of Pennsylvania. We were recognized as a best practice by the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and it's been replicated several times over throughout the country, the model itself. One button admission for students in Philadelphia. So when parents try to traverse this universe of school options, each charter school tends to have a different deadline, a different process. This system allowed families to identify several sets of schools that they were interested in, regardless of school type, push one button and they had one admission process. So it's just ease of use. It was much more efficient. It just made a lot of sense for parents and caregivers. So that's the type of work I was involved in. And then from there, I found myself here at Education Works. So it's just like all these different experiences that I've had sort of lends itself to this position, and sort of understanding the needs of our constituents, our stakeholders, in a lot of different areas, whether that be the financial side of it, the school option and programming side of it. It's just been extremely helpful to have this portfolio of experiences and leverage them in this new position.
Yeah, I think it's great for people to understand that you're where you are now, but you had to fight and claw your way there, and those experiences built to what you are.
Absolutely.
But you know, one thing that's always stood out to me about you, knowing your background and while the way you explain each of those positions, they all are different and your responsibilities were different, you did make that commitment that everything you do is about serving or caring for other people.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned about how you were focused. All right, I was going to be a criminal justice attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
You went a very different direction.
Very different.
But talk about what is there something that happened in your life that says this makes me want to serve people? Yeah.
Yeah. One is it definitely has roots in just my genes, like both sides of my family. I come on my mom's side. I come from a family of educators. My aunts, they're all teachers, assistant principals, principals.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that on that side. On my father's side, definitely have lawyers, people who assist people through process in various legal situations, all in a matter of service on both sides. So I think that sort of just poured into me. It came about very naturally, organically to who I am. Also, in the period that I grew up in, the mid to late 80s, there was a drug epidemic that hit middling communities and poor neighborhoods. I watched my friends fall victim to that in a lot of different ways. So either it was the violence that they succumbed to, or it was them finding themselves in the prison industrial complex. So for me, it's like, how can I have impact given my experiences, some of the pain that I suffered through as a teenager during that time? How do I have impact? So the first thing I thought about is like, how can I present or represent individuals who look like me, who grew up in situations that I was in, a lot of times reinforced by institutions. How do I participate in a way that gives them a fair shake? Because a lot of times you don't see a fair shake within these legal systems or legal processes. So that was my mindset coming in. That's what I wanted to get done. I had the opportunity my junior year at Lincoln University to work at a maximum security placement in the deep, deep woods of Westchester, Pennsylvania. and there, that's where I found CaseFile. You had many young people who were there for an assortment of reasons, some very, very serious. And you can grow up in certain neighborhoods and have certain experiences. But the one thing your next door neighbor or your best friend won't do is provide you CaseFile. And a lot of times we don't look at people as people, and they don't come out as bad people. There are a set of experiences or things that people engage or have interface with, and it can change them. Unfortunately, you can make one small mistake and find yourself in a very bad situation for the rest of your life. So when I had the opportunity to read CaseFile, that really just opened my eyes, like just how unfairly an individual can be treated by the system. There's so much money, time, and resource putting into punitive responses to issues and matters that need care. That was just really brought home for me. If you were a different person in a different zip code and a series of events took place, the response would be much, much different. It would be care provided. It would be support provided. And instead, the individuals I grew up with, the first thing people could think of is like this punitive response. As an example, in the 80s, you had the crack epidemic. And for individuals who either sold crack or who used it, they were considered monsters and zombies. Now you fast forward into 2021, and there's a different face on drug use now. When you talk about methamphetamine and all these other drugs, mm-hmm. There are literally commercials now saying, how do we treat? How do we care? That's not what we were given when the face was different in the 80s. It actually fueled the prison industrial complex. And people who had a drug issue, they were given prison sentences versus, drug and alcohol support. So, that's where my mind was. And when I engaged CaseFile, I said, what would it mean for me to have more thoughtful conversations with individuals before they made that one critical mistake that jumped the time with me to like $300 an hour or $200 an hour. Like, what if I could engage people before that? So that's what made me pivot. That made the shift. And I'm not sorry that I did that at all.
Yeah. So it's funny. One of the a small word that you used in that response when I was preparing to chat with you, I wrote it down is impact. Obviously, it's only a few letters, but it has major meaning, and it's a word I thought of when I thought about you, and something I'd like other folks to learn from you is obviously what you're talking about, your major impact. You're talking about major challenges that you and Education Works are playing a role in solving. I genuinely think all people, not all people, but almost all people are good and want to make a good, positive impact, but don't always know how, or maybe don't want to do it at the level that you're doing it. But what advice do you have for folks that want to make an impact, in whether it be large or small?
Really think about your influence from where you stand. I think a lot of times people make the big mistake and saying, I'm going to wait till MLK Day, and then I'm going to go out to a community that doesn't look like mine, and I'm going to sweep the street. That's great. That's fine. It's a statement for the moment. The bigger question is, from where you sit, from where you stand on a daily basis, what position do you take in the most critical moment? So right now, particularly in these days and times, people make it a point to have these grand gestures, these grand statements. Ever since the uprisings before COVID hit, like, everybody wanted to make a statement. We believe in, and now the big conversation is D&I, diversity and inclusion. And people have quotes and companies have quotes. It's a lot of it's hot air. It's like, I have to do this because now I have to do this. It's like that. It's so upfront now that you have to do it. The bigger question is, how do you walk your walk away from the quote? And how do you participate away from the camera is the question. What is the conversation at your dinner table, particularly with young people who look to you for guidance? Is it a message of, oh, it's MLK Day, we have to do our annual thing? Or on a daily basis, are you sitting down with your loved ones, people that you walk with, to maybe stop a conversation that's inappropriate? Maybe to make a bold statement in a barbershop when it's like just open talk to say, hey, actually, I disagree with that. So, I'm taking a different approach here. Like, I could easily run out, Google search an organization and give them some money. Like, that's easy. The harder work is self-work, self-maintenance and self-care, and then how one presents to the people closest to them. You can make a grand statement with people who don't know you. It's quite another thing to have an intimate conversation with somebody who does know you. That's the harder work. How do you move away from that and really think about how you participate on a daily basis with the people around you? How do you enter that barbershop or that salon, and when people are saying things that are completely off base, be brave enough to say the right thing about, you name the topic? To me, that's how you make a difference. Like, even at Education Works, we no longer head out and do, the typical, the typical work on MLK Day. We actually spend that time in mindfulness training, a education about the MLK movement. One is the beloved community, and what that means. What's the definition of that? What did that mean exactly? Let's get boned up on that and have that change our daily walk. So it's not just about the moment or a calendar date. How do we literally go about the process of improving ourselves so our daily walk is better? And then making that transition from an ally. That's a conversation. Everybody, I want to be an ally. Yeah, I don't need an ally. I need a co-conspirator. Allies are strategic. You can go to World War I and then go from World War I to World War II, and allies will change on you. A co-conspirator, that means we're in it together. Co-conspirator actually means we're going to take action together, actions that we can't take back, right? Allies is like, yeah, I'm with you right now. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So the mindset is different. When you're a co-conspirator, it's about action. We're going to take action together. And it starts with, how does one carry themselves at the dinner table? How do you lead conversations at the dinner table, at the barbershop, in public spaces with people that know you? So for me, that's where the change is. That's the opportunity.
Yeah. And one of the many things I admire about you is you have been someone who said, okay, I know how to change someone's life. It's by putting myself in it and being an example or being a friend or whatever. It's not just making a cool speech or following the trends. And you've built a career in life around stepping
Yeah.
into it and being in it.
And I put my foot in it a lot, actually,
Yeah.
to the detriment, and in some cases to the detriment of my career. Because when you speak truth to power, or when you say things that you know are going to make people uncomfortable, there's certain doors that are closed for you. So part of being a co-conspirator, this idea of being super authentic, means there will be certain things that will not come your way because, frankly, there'll be people who don't agree with you. There will be people who are afraid of the message. And you have to know that when you take that step. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
Right.
And even how we talk about it, right? So the one thing we try to share within our organization, like, we don't even take the stance that we're saving people's lives, right? So if you took the narrative that's typically just set in urban environments, you know, program is here, said program, kid signs up for program, and then the news will say, you know, this program saved this kid's life. If the same program happened 2 miles out and we were out in the main line somewhere, the story would sound like, mom and dad or parents found program, signed student up, student took the initiative to take advantage of said program, and look at him or her now. You move that same story into the city limits, it's like, the program saved people's lives. That you know, we're not into the whole hero thing. These are human beings. That kid decided to come to school every day. That mom or dad found the program, took advantage of it, just like what would have happened outside of city limits. Our job is just to present opportunity. Like, hey, did you know? Look at this. You can do this. That kid found something that they were extremely passionate about, and they ran with it. So, you know, our role is just like, how do we present information to the people we serve so that they can find what they're passionate about and they can run crazy. People save their own lives, right? We also try to our very best not to put titles in front of people's names. So a lot of times with nonprofit organizations, you'll hear things like poor people. We serve poor people or disenfranchised people. Like, who wants to be defined by their current condition or situation?
Right.
Is that fair? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, that's a person at this moment in time, they're going through something. That shouldn't define that person. So we're trying our very best as an organization to honor people, not sort of speak in a certain way. And in that common language, it forces you to correct your action, if that makes sense. So if you speak a certain way and that's on your mind, it'll start to correct your movements. Like, oh, you know what? We don't talk like that. You know what I mean? It's like, so, and I want to be careful not to sound like we're perfect. We're not perfect. This is all us working towards getting better every single day. I'm not perfect. No one is. But if you try to keep those things front and center, like honoring the humanity in people, how you serve looks and sounds a lot different than what other people are willing to say and do.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit to Miles, the CEO.
Okay.
So, you know, what's always interesting about someone who's the CEO is, if you think about it, the work that you do day in and day out, right? You're not chopping down trees. You're not moving lumber. You're not doing tons and tons of paperwork on your own.
No.
But
no.
You have a whole lot to do.
Yeah.
Does it ever wear you out? And if so, what do you decide to do when you might be a little tired or not completely on your game?
Yeah. That's a really good question. Like, self-care is incredibly important. I've learned that the last 3 to 4 years, just how important it is. I always fancy myself somebody that has high capacity, the ability to take on a lot, shoulder a lot, and push on. the last 3 or 4 years have really taught me the importance of, like, even if you're built that way, if you're equipped that way, you don't want to be over reliant on that ability, because sooner or later it's going to wear you down. So the one thing I've had to learn is to respect those things that I can't control. And as simple as that sounds, one of the hardest things to do for certain personality types, right? And I'm one of those personality types. So, you know, the lesson that I've learned is you can't control everything, and everything can't be perfect. That alone eases you. If you can get through, if you can make that breakthrough, it eases you. And what I've started to adopt is a dashboard mindset. Now, I learned that through my stepfather, who was a pilot in the military during the Vietnam War. And the one thing he used to share with me, and I actually have this trickled down, this dashboarding actually trickled down to my leadership team. It's like, if we were to write down everything that's on our mind, everything that we have to be on top of, we would overwhelm the board, right? And we would not do a singular thing well. But if we would take 3 or 4 things that we knew, if we handled those things, it would have a trickle down effect to the many. That's a healthier way to address issues. So the dashboard is something that I push to my leadership team and that I use myself. And where I get that from is, you know, I used to talk to my stepdad, and always amazed at some of his pursuits, his endeavors as a pilot in Vietnam. And I used to say, like, man, that dashboard, like, it's like 8 million things going on. He said, let me tell you something. There's like 3 gauges that mean everything in the dashboard. It's not the 8 million. Do I have enough gas? You know what I mean? It's like, you name like 3 things that are critical. Like, that's all you really need to be concerned about. Everything else is everything else, but it's like 3 things. And when he said that to me, it turned something on for me. And it made me like really like recognize and identify like super priorities. And if you handle the super priorities, it's this trickle down effect to everything else. And then it was a call for me to a couple of my leadership teams, even before this job, to create a dashboard for them. Create your dashboard. Because if you try to keep track of 30 different things, none of this stuff is going to go well for you. What are the 3 things in your world that you know if you handle them, it's going to have impact on 10 other things? And then start thinking about the people who you support directly. You should start to see that your dashboards under you connected to your bigger dashboard, and then connect up. So that's how how we've trained our organization, and that's how we try to tackle things.
Yeah. So I have two closing questions that are staples for this series. So obviously, as a CEO, you make decisions. You make decisions on behalf of Education Works and the board on consultants or vendors you hire, people that you hire.
Sure.
What goes into those decisions to choose those relationships from your perspective?
We've built a simple index of relatability, capability, and passion. That's how we hire, and that's how we partner, right? So the relatability factor, I tell everybody, even in business, it's relational. If you don't get that, like, I don't know what to tell you as a business person. Right. We're human beings. It's relational. On the partnership side, when we use those scales, I need to be able to look across from you. And before we talk about brass tacks, I need to know that I trust you. Right. Now, it's hard to prove until we really get some work done together. But man, if I have a bad feeling about you and if I feel like we can't converse, like, how does anything else get done?
Right.
You know, I have right. So it's relatability. Relatability opens the door for conversation, dialogue, and exchange, right? And this is even how we attempt to hire. Next is capability. Once you open the door and I can relate to you, now you can show me all your gadgets, you know, right, just how incredible you are. Show me your outcomes, your output, show me all that good stuff, right? That's your capability. And then lastly is passion. We all know as business people or people who serve, there are going to be difficult times. The only thing that drives you through difficult times is a passion for the work. So for me, it's relatability, capability, and passion. That's how I make decisions on partnerships.
Yeah, thank you. And there's a word you used in that, and I've known you for years now, and the phrase I think is used a lot more now, but you used it before I heard most people using it, was partner.
Mm.
You were one of the first people I heard say we're looking for a partner, and that was years ago.
Absolutely.
Now everybody tries to
It's the
say,
fun
"Oh,
thing to
let's
say.
be a partner," but you were
Yeah.
looking for that before it was
Yeah.
developed in the professional world.
It's literally recognizing the humanity in people that, for me, that had me using partner, even 10 to 15 years ago in business. And you're right, it was not a common thing to hear. But the way I look at it is, in the partnership, all business is an exchange of goods and things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it's an exchange of goods and things, whether we like it or not, it is indeed a partnership.
Right.
For this thing to continue to push on and be fruitful on both sides, it's a partnership. A lot of times people want to have the advantage and present it as something different. If I'm signing a contract with a consultant, I dangle this over your head. I don't have time to dangle things over your head. What I want you to be is successful. Because if you're successful, ultimately I'm getting what I want. It's a partnership.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Now we can end the partnership, but then all that does is make me, spend more time on finding the next partner or the next person to come in. I really don't want to do that. I want to engage you, go through our steps, and then be incredibly successful. I want you to be successful on your end, because your success means I've been successful as well. So I've just always viewed it as a partnership.
Thank you. So last question. If you had to write your own eulogy, what would you want the legacy of Miles Wilson to be?
Wow. I'm really comfortable with people in their position with me. Like, what I mean by that is I can live with people saying they don't like me. There's probably 3 or 4 people on the planet Earth, if they said they didn't like me, I'd be devastated by it. All right.
Right.
Outside of that, what I'm more concerned about is, did he treat me fairly? And by treating one fairly, it doesn't mean that you care for me or like me. I've sort of moved on from that. Our parents tried to teach us that lesson a very, very long time ago. Somehow, just as a collective, we have gotten away from this idea. Now everything has to be that everybody likes you, right? Social media only makes it worse. And my mom told me a long time ago, the second you try to make everybody happy is the day you're you're unhappy, because you can't make everybody happy. So I've accepted this idea that I'm not going to be liked by everybody. I also understand that if you're liked by everybody, you probably didn't stand for much. Right? So for me, how I would like to be remembered is not about like or love. It's about fair. Like, even if you can't stand me, when you go to bed at night and you think about how we engage one another, good or bad, no matter where it took place at, no matter where it happened, if in your head you're like, probably was a fair response given what took place, right, I can live with that. So as unexciting and sexy as it sounds, I want to be thought of as fair, even if fair means people don't care for me or they love me. Either way, fairness is a thing. I would love for people to view me as and recognize my sense of humor. So for people who know me really well, and even my family, like we crack jokes at funerals. Like, so we're not for people who are thin skinned at all. Like, it's just how my family is. So sense of humor is big for me. So fairness and humor are the 2 things I would love people to remember before.
Well, they will. And I really appreciate you taking the time to join me, Miles. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
I appreciate it. It's really good seeing your face again. I hope to see you in person really soon. And thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks, Miles.